Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Pleased to
Good
welcome
afternoon.
you back. It was a very busy break. We had a lot of interesting things. Now we're going on with Sofia Parastatidu, who's really specialized in legal translation and interpreting. And we're very excited about what she is going to bring to our discussion this afternoon. And Sophia, I'll let you say more about yourself, bring out the relevant points as you go along. I think we
Okay.
want to hear uh, your presentation. So I will
Okay.
cut out here. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Gillian. I'm actually not a official translator or interpreter. However, I do consider myself part of your club. Why? Because from the age of 8, I was expected to translate and interpret for my parents in Sydney. I'm a Sydney girl and I'm a child of migrants, and my parents did not speak English. So I am a de facto, if you like, a de facto translator interpreter. My paper comes from a legal point of view. And this is because I am currently using translators and interpreters in a Supreme Court proceeding in New South Wales. And there are some very interesting codes of conduct that have come up and the way that the courts are dealing with it. And so I thought that I could discuss this with you also today and get some feedback, some comments from you, see what you think. Okay, all right. Can you see my screen? Perfect. Okay, so far so good. At least I got the first screen up. Okay, so I initially called this paper the Translator's Ethics, and then I thought, wait a minute, I like to be all inclusive. So let's put the interpreters in there too. So, Translators, Interpreters, Ethics in the AI era, is it a shake-up or a revolution? My agenda today, I will start by looking at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I'm going to talk about the role of interpreters and translators. I'll look at some ethical issues in AI use, things like confidentiality, accuracy, professional responsibility, bias, transparency, conflict of interest, intellectual property issues, and the impact on translating and the interpreting profession. And I'll see if I can come up with a conclusion by the time I finish the slide. Okay, so the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we have some fundamental rights. Article 2 says that everyone's entitled to freedom without distinction of race, language. We are all equal before the law. Article 8 says that we have the right to effective remedies by competent national tribunals. We are entitled, according to Article 10, to full equality, to fair public hearing by independent, impartial tribunals, and the all-important, we are presumed innocent until proven guilty. So this is the declaration. Okay. And so I went along and I had a look at some New South Wales cases because this is where my case is pending. And here we have the Court of Appeal in New South Wales, and the judge said, at common law, whether an interpreter should be used is a matter of discretion of the trial judge. So the slide before said we all have a fundamental right not to be discriminated on the basis of language, but now we have a discretionary power to use interpreters. The discretion will generally be exercised according to an assessment, which will be carried out by the judge, and the judge will look to see whether there is an unfair disadvantage, and he or she will weigh that up against the idea that maybe the interpreter has been used for extraneous or ulterior purposes. And we have a Greek case here, which is used as an example where the interpreter was used for ulterior purposes. And I imagine that it was a way of delaying the inevitable. According to Section 30 of the Evidence Act in New South Wales, a witness may give evidence through an interpreter unless that particular witness is able to sufficiently understand the questions that are being put to them. Now, interpreters and translators and editors have an important role. As far as I'm concerned, you have an essential role in maintaining equality, access, and fair trials. In fact, your own code of conduct starts off by saying, I, full stop. I still cannot, I'll be honest with you, guys, I can't get over the fact that you have a full stop and not a comma. That is so powerful in terms of language.
It's not a full stop.
It's
a
not
numbering. It's a
Oh, it's a
paragraph number.
numbering. Oh.
As a translator, interpreter, and/or editor,
well, there
a
you
bridge.
go. Thank you
And
very
then the subject is I commit myself.
Right. Okay. I apologies. I was for days thinking, wow, this is so powerful because it starts with an I and it's a full stop. But thank you for clearing that up. Okay. You are expected as translators, interpreters, and editors to be a bridge for ideas from one language to another and one culture to another. And then you make this commitment. You commit yourselves to high standards of performance, ethical behavior, and business practices. Let's talk about AI. So we all know that technology is reshaping language professions. So this is not a new phenomenon. AI has allowed access and given democratic use, if you like. Everyone can access AI provided their governments allow it. It has lowered barriers in cross-linguistic communication. Information is available, which would otherwise be excluded. We know that AI tools offer speed and efficiency, but they do introduce some serious ethical challenges. And another thing they do, and I'm sure we will have some lively discussion about this, is that they undercut the work of professional human translators, especially those who are working in less common language pairs or may find themselves in developed countries or developing countries where AI may not be available. Okay. One of the main issues is the confidentiality and data protection. And we know that sensitive legal and personal data can be exposed. There is a risk that you're breaching confidentiality or GDPR rules. You may need to get your client's consent before you use AI, and we will discuss this in a little bit more detail. Many AI translation services process text through cloud servers, and the law involving cloud servers is very complex and it's vague. And there is a question about who owns the data that passes through these systems and who is responsible for breaches. More importantly, how do you find the culprits? Now, personal story. Somebody has hacked my Facebook account, and for the past 3 months, I've been trying to get it back, and I can't. It's a nightmare. So I can't imagine if I had any hacking into clouds where information is stored. Another topic. Let's move on to clause 5 of your code. It says that you will safeguard the interests of your client as if they were your own and divulge no obviously confidential information. And you are aware that the clients may condition your work on signing an NDA. Moving along, accuracy and the illusion of reliability. We know that AI can sound fluent and it could be completely wrong. There are court cases, there are many, many court cases. We know that machine translations can propagate errors, mistranslations, and they can also lead to cultural misunderstandings. Terminology and nuance may be distorted. And the question is, would good enough do? I had a look at the Federal Court of Australia. For those of you who may not be familiar, the Australian system, there is a state law, a state system, and also a federal system. And the Federal Court's Code of Conduct for its interpreters and translators includes this: to preserve the content and intent of the communication without omission or distortion, and include matters which might be considered inappropriate or offensive by the translator or the interpreter. However, all indications say that human verification remains essential. Now, without being polemic, you and I can discuss human verification as much as we like, but how do we convince the client, who's the ultimate payer? I will come back to this dilemma later. Your code also says that you will endeavor to translate or interpret the original message faithfully. You recognize that ideally such a level of excellence requires mastery of the target language at a level equivalent to that of an educated native speaker. You need to have up-to-date knowledge on the topic and relevant terminology in both the source and the target languages. You need to have access to information sources, auxiliary tools, and have familiarity with appropriate professional tools. And I'm asking myself, is this where we insert artificial intelligence? And you have to make ongoing efforts to improve, broaden, and strengthen your skills and your knowledge. So my question now, and since we already have had a bit of a chat, we can do this now. How many of you, A, use AI, and B, disclose it to your client, and C and D, how do you adjust your fees, and do you adjust your fees? Yes, Naomi.
So I do legal translation and interpreting. It's less relevant for interpreting, but what I do with the written translation is I offer clients two distinct quotes. I offer full professional human translation, and I offer AI. I tell them specifically in the quote, for confidentiality reasons, we will not upload the material to an AI engine. However, should you choose, if you want us to do that, then we will. You just have to waive confidentiality. And in that case, we'll just do it by the hour. I don't commit to the number of hours because I tell them that the number of hours will depend on the quality of the AI output, and obviously it also depends on the urgency. But I usually tell them that the cap will be according to the human translation quote. And I have to say that until now, most legal clients do not want AI translation.
Okay.
A few of them do, but I kind of pass the bucket to them And
Okay.
I tell them it's up to you. If you want to waive confidentiality, I'm happy to work with AI. So I'm sort of what I want to put across is I'm familiar with the tool. I'm not afraid of the tool, but I won't accept responsibility for information security.
Okay. Okay. So complete disclosure and informed consent is what you're doing. Anybody else?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Yes.
I'm a medical translator.
Uh-huh.
I do nothing with AI. I don't touch it because it's obvious that I will breach confidentiality, and as a result, I don't know how to use AI at all, except of when I just want to find something about knitting in the. I ask the ChatGPT, but nothing more.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay. So from complete disclosure to I'm not touching it. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to say something, Sophia.
Yes, yes.
Okay. I use it as a sparring partner for sometimes for research and for bad phrasing, or for when something's not transparent or when it's really not working out in the English. But I don't put documents in. I did try it once and it wasn't very faithful, and it wasn't a confidential document, and it was anonymized in every way possible. But and it was with the client's knowledge that it was the only way they could receive from me a Russian translation. But really, I think that every case rests on its own merits, and that the what we heard yesterday about the confidentiality and security is paramount to most of us, especially when we sign NDAs. And the client doesn't, if the client has paid us to do human translation, that's what they're entitled to. If the client wants AI translation with being to be post processed or whatever, then that's what they ask for, or that's what they should agree to. And anything else is like it lacks transparency, to my opinion.
Okay. You've anticipated some of the things I'm going to talk about.
I would just add some of the points that were raised yesterday and this morning also. We need to differentiate in terms of, say, using AI. There's a big difference between taking a whole document with identifying data and whatever and feeding it in and then receiving a translation and then editing it and whatever, to using AI as a supportive tool where you take, I have a problem with this expression, which doesn't actually include the name or or any other identifying thing, in the context of how would I translate this? Now, I don't use AI for various reasons, but we need to differentiate between using AI as a supportive tool, just like one would use a dictionary or thesaurus and whatever, and have to make a judgment call, to using the AI as the translation engine.
Good points, Perry. Good points. So an auxiliary tool as opposed to the tool. Okay.
I may interject.
Yes.
I'm not working in a capacity of interpreter nor as a translator. We are a software company providing a platform for managing interpretation and translations. But our clients who are language service providers are mainly in Sweden and in Finland. So I understand the system, how it works here. And mainly if we focus on the private clients, of course, the private client in Sweden and in Finland, they can decide if they want an AI translation and would they want a human editing on top of it or not. But when it comes to the public sector does not define if they want a AI translation or a human translation. Their focus is solely on the quality of the project when it is ready and then delivered to them. So if it is a court case delivered to a translation company, which is then further to a vendor, which is a freelance vendor, then of course the translation company will decide if they are using an AI tool, and then a freelance vendor will look at it as a proofreader or as an editor or post editor, and then goes back to the translation company and goes back to the court. But the court is solely looking at the final document, uh, and the quality of it, nor how it is done and what tool was it used. Was it 100% human translation or not? And also, when it comes to interpretations, in Sweden, interpreters are classified in different levels depending on the registered translator interpreter for the court, or is it just a registered interpreter? Is it a medical interpreter, or is it the educated interpreter, or is just a person who does interpretation with no education, like yourself for your parents when you were a child? And then there is a price set for those interpreters, and also there's regulations that is this interpretation happening from 8 to 6. After 6, there's 20% increase that must be delivered and billed. Also, if it is going after 10 p.m. from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., there's a 50% increase. On red holidays, it's 100% increase in the fees that they get. So in Finland and in Sweden, it's heavily regulated and pre-decided. So it's not really that much of a room to wiggle with the interpretations, but the translations, again, that depends on. But they don't decide the tool; they just look at the quality of the.
Okay. If I can just add to this, if you're preparing translations for New South Wales, Australia, and I imagine it's the same in the UK, you actually have to disclose it in an affidavit when you're serving the translation. There has to be disclosure. When you're, and you also have to make reference to the code of conduct, which is a code which the court publishes, and say that you've read it and that you know your duties, etc. So interesting to see. We will come back to this, because if we have time, I don't want to take up too much time. Otherwise, I'll have to come back next year and do part 2 of this talk. Wouldn't that be fun? Okay, because there'll be a lot of changes by then. So let me continue. We've touched on some of these. I think the main message is that various countries, various operators, everybody has different standards, and I will come back to that. And so we know, I looked at your code, and your code says that you have to be truthful about your qualifications and abilities and not accept any assignments for which you are not properly qualified, or which is, or where it is unlikely that you will be able to complete the project on time. I will come back to this, but I'm thinking, if I've got AI tools and I can use, and I know that without those AI tools, I don't have the full professional qualification needed, does AI get me over the line insofar as that rule is concerned? Unfortunately, when you belong to professional bodies, you are ethically responsible. And with AI, humans are ethically responsible. But if there are negligence cases, the question is, who is accountable? And of course, over-reliance on AI may reduce competence. I just referred to people's handwriting as an example. When I see young people's handwriting these days, I am a little bit disappointed with the quality, because they're so used to using computers. And ethical practice requires independent judgment. So we have to exercise the best judgment we can. AI, of course, creates bias. It inherits bias, and then it starts to propagate them, as I said previously. There might be a case where minority voices or dialects are misrepresented or not represented at all. And just using some examples from Italy, the Bolognese accent, or the Bolognese, not accent, sorry, the Bolognese dialect and the dialect from Sardinia are two dialects which are dying out, and there are conscious efforts to reintroduce this through literature so that it doesn't disappear. AI is predominantly trained in dominant languages, hate to say it, but American. So other languages are underrepresented, and of course, this can create problems in that we risk losing cultural specificity, idiomatic meanings, cultural independence. We eliminate those minority languages or dialects, and there is an encouragement to use what's easy, accessible, cheapest, especially if it's for free. Your code of conduct emphasizes the importance of translating and also being mindful of the you are between cultures, and this means that translations are not just linguistic conversions. They are the interpretation of cultural backgrounds. Transparency, we touched on this before. There is a lot of debate about whether you should disclose it, but courts have made it that if you are signing affidavits, you are disclosing to the judges. They want to know whether you are using AI to produce any part of your affidavit or any of the annexures. So if your translation is an annexure, you need to disclose this. If you don't disclose it and you are discovered, and most of the times you will be discovered, it will harm your reputation. And of course, that could be the biggest downside of not disclosing. I'm going to skip a couple of things here, so don't take up too much time. But the conflict of interest, translators, you have to disclose where personal relationship or financial gains might influence your work. I have looked at your code of conduct. I don't see anything about conflicts of interest and whether you need to disclose this. And the question here is who discloses it? In the other codes of conduct that I have looked at, there is a section that talks about conflict of interest. The most important thing, of course, is authorship and intellectual property. So who owns any of the AI-assisted translations? And there is, of course, risks of reproducing material which is covered by copyright. And, of course, the ethical question of passing off things that you haven't done. So the copyright issues for you as translators would be, well, who owns my translation? Is it the machine? Is it the author? Is it the client? Is it the employer? Your terms and conditions should set this out. I didn't find anything in your code of conduct which gives an indication about authorship and intellectual property. Maybe this is something that your association advises you separately outside the code of conduct. And of course, the pressure on pricing and working conditions. I'll be honest with you, in Italy, pricing and working conditions for translators has always been abysmal, and it's even worse now because perhaps unlike your clients, Italian translators tell me, I have lost nearly all of my work because Italian companies are not too worried about the translations, like, oh, it's good enough, don't worry, we don't want to spend the money. Of course, we should all be concerned about the standards that we are putting out there. Interpreting, I didn't want to leave the interpreters out, but of course, speech recognition errors. Every time I dictate something to any of my machines here, I always get funny feedback. We're all worried about people listening in. Every time I mention a holiday destination, as I did before, I'm sure my Facebook and my Gmail is going to be full of suggestions and ads. I mean, real-time mistakes can affect legal outcomes. Sometimes interpreters do add in their own biases or what's been said. This depends on what the court's attitude is towards the role of the interpreters. In New South Wales, the Code of Conduct says that translators must not express personal opinions during assignments. However, just between us and off the record, as all good lawyers say, speaking to professional translators in the UK, it looks like they offer a lot of personal opinions to the judges in migration cases, which to me, as a legal practitioner, not practicing in that area, is quite disturbing that they are adding in their own interpretations. And of course, the question is, would my client agree? Am I able to stand behind every word in this document? Is the data protected? And am I exercising professional judgment? So is it a revolution? The quick answer to this, without reading all the slide for you, is that no revolution, as far as I'm concerned. AI makes translations faster, produces, it doesn't necessarily produce better outputs. The danger is it makes decisions and it creates data and it can influence data and it shifts decisions from humans to machines. We know that AI is used to filter applications. It's used in criminal investigations to identify criminals and profile criminals. And this is used in the UK and in Australia. And interestingly enough, the New South Wales Supreme Court has made some very, very strict rules about professional lawyers using AI. But when it's come to translations, it actually has not ruled out using AI. So I thought that was an interesting gap in the code for lawyers, because it seems like there is a gap for AI to be used in translations, and the judges may turn a blind eye to that. We know about systematic discrimination. Is it a shakeup? I think it is a shakeup. Again, AI didn't create bias, gender discrimination, etc. All these have been around a long time before AI. There is also latent bias. The question is, it's widespread because of the easy access to AI, that it's spread faster. And of course, this leads to questions about defamation, propaganda, and improper use of client information. So my question is, do we now start thinking about global ethics? Do we need a global ethical statement? And this also creates problems because ethics differ depending on cultures. Some cultures are protective over privacy, others push innovation. If we embed ethics into an AI system, whose ethics is it going to be? Who has the superior ethical blueprint? And because I have no answers, I will talk about the duty to courts and due process. You as translators and interpreters, so you have a very important role when it comes to the rule of law. We as practitioners owe duties to courts, and we all have codes of conduct. And in Australia, you guys are roped into this because there are also codes of conduct when it comes to your participation in legal proceedings. And the most significant thing is that any failings or non-disclosure could damage our professional careers and our reputation and with the internet. I have no solutions, so I thank you for your attention. I'm happy to take any comments or any questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you think we should revise our code of conduct in view of your observations?
I think so.
Maybe we should wait till things settle down.
That could also be a good option. I'm working with when I got a copy of your code of conduct, I was a bit surprised about how short it was and the fact that it didn't mention conflicts of interest and it didn't mention the intellectual property. And then I went and had a look at the Australian ones, and I thought, oh, gee, they've got conflict of interest and authorship and intellectual property. I think that the Australian ones have also been updated as recently as the beginning of this year because of AI. They are in constant updating, and this is only because the Chief Justice of the New South Wales Court is going on tour around talking about AI and the impact it has on legal proceedings. I suspect because he's planning to retire soon, and I've joined his bandwagon too, not because I plan on retiring, but if he does, maybe leaves an opening for me. I don't know. I figured that we're the same age. And so when I started my legal career, I didn't even have a computer, internet. I had nothing, pen, paper, and the two fingers for typewriting. And now I'm talking to you about AI and your codes of conduct. I mean, who would have ever thought?
Sophia, I don't think anybody has ever read the ITA Code of Conduct as thoroughly as you did for this talk.
Well, I wanted to make it relevant for you rather than talking about codes of conduct. The Italian Code of Conduct, much to my surprise, has been put together very recently, because until recently, the translating and interpreting industry wasn't actually a recognized industry. And now it's because the EU has pushed this qualification that the Italians have kind of said, okay, we need a code. Next week, I mean, not that I'm plugging our conference, but we have a winter school next week on AI, and I'm going to dissect the Italian code of conduct for them. Maybe I will do a comparative with yours. I don't know. But the Italians have got another problem, which is convincing clients to actually use them and to pay proper fees.
But do they have an association? I mean, is there an Italian association?
Yeah, they have an association, and the president of that association also belongs to ours, to ITA. And I think that the idea is that maybe we will be working together towards getting something a little bit more official, but they've got a lot of chronic problems in that the pay is so low. The pay is really low. Because of the Mediterranean. I hate to say it, but I'm Greek as well, and I know that in Greece the problems are the same. In Greece, any lawyer can do translations, which I find incredible, because as a lawyer, I certainly should not be doing translations. But the Italians got me to do 3 translations. I thought I was going to die in the process. I honestly thought this is the worst thing. I'd rather be cross-examined by a high court judge or a lord than to do a translation. I thought I was going to die. I was like, why the hell did I agree?
I'd like to thank you, Sophia. I think I have kind of something to come back on some of your questions about the code of conduct. Authorship is a very amorphous sphere, to the best of my understanding, as a non-lawyer in Israel. And therefore, it's not something that we can state, because it's not something that's really protected as secondary authors of content, although it's on the statute books, as they say, but it's not protected in Israel, and there's really therefore very little point, excuse me, in addressing it. But the conflict of interest, I think we should really be going into, and some of the points you made also echo back to something a case that from today that Peter Lawton engaged with over lunchtime in terms of transparency and the right of an author to know and to agree to the use of AI. I think you've raised some really crucial issues, and if anybody else has more questions or more insights before we close this part of the afternoon session, the midday session, please come forward. And there's some people here who have not spoken a lot. Maybe you'd like to become involved in the discussion. Karen, or I know Ruth's been maybe some people are not on camera but who are here and they're listening and making notes. Maybe you'd like to say something or ask a question. If not, then I think we'll express our thanks. And
by the way, Sophia, you said earlier something just it came to mind. You mentioned about the bias towards stronger languages, okay? And this bias exists also towards certain accents. For instance, the American accent that's considered like the gold standard. And a few years ago, Microsoft must have been toying with the idea of introducing more accents because Microsoft Word has a feature for reading out loud documents. And at some point, out of the blue, they introduced this Israeli voice. And this Israeli voice started reading out the documents in an Israeli accent. It was very funny, but then they disabled the feature and we never heard the Microsoft Asaf again.
Yeah. Just in terms of copyright and translators, to get copyright, you need to show that you have made some kind of authorship, and some translations could satisfy that test. I don't know about the copyright laws in Israel, but in Australia, definitely there's been a couple of court cases years ago, nothing recent, but years ago, where even taking telephone numbers and putting them in a book, so just taking and putting things, there was a copyright claim on that, and it succeeded. It succeeded. So if a translator is working on a translation, and if you are bringing in the cultural, the nuances, etc., it could trigger copyright. It could. And so it depends on exactly what you're doing. And perhaps maybe your clients want you to release any copyright when it comes to doing the translations. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was a complex issue because the Copyright Act from 2007 to 2008, and probably Nomi will correct me, tried to be as comprehensive as possible, including, of course, records and movies, and didn't put an emphasis on translation. So the rule of a judge was you have to arrange in your contract for translation that who will the copyright belong to.
Well, thank you very much, Eliezer, for really breaking the fine points. This is possibly another reason why we don't need to address it. But I think that Sophia, you raised so many varied issues and brought a wealth of experience into our world as translators, interpreters, and editors that it's going to be invaluable. I think it's not just the parallels; it's the questions you raised as a legal practitioner. Thank you very, very much for being with us.
You're
and we
very
hope we'll
welcome.
see you.